Chapter 1: Echoes of Decay. The clang of metal against metal echoed through the Psychopomp Station's docking bay, far louder than it should have been in the near vacuum of space. Eva Rostova winced, the sound grating against her teeth. It had been a long journey, and her patience was already wearing thin. "Quiet down, Hammer," she barked, her voice crackling over the comms. "We don't want to attract any unwanted attention." "Unwanted attention," Kenji Hammer Tanaka's voice boomed back even through the comms. "Who's gonna hear us out here, Captain? Space rats." Eva ignored him. Hammer was all brawn and bravado, a necessary asset on a salvage run like this, but also a constant headache. She surveyed the docking bay, its walls scarred with age and neglect. Paint peeled off in flakes, revealing rusted metal beneath. Cables snaked across the floor like metallic vines, some severed and sparking intermittently. The air, recycled and stale, tasted faintly of ozone and decay. "Static, give me a systems check," Eva commanded. A moment later, Jack's static, Riley's nervous voice filled her ear. "Docking clamps are secure, Captain. Power grid is showing minimal activity. Life support is, well, it's functioning technically. Recommend we proceed with caution." "Caution is our middle name, Static," Eva replied dryly. "Doc, what's your assessment of the environment?" Marcus Doc Bellwether, his voice raspy and laced with a cough, responded, "Atmosphere is breathable, though I wouldn't recommend taking off your helmets. Plenty of dust and debris. Could be some fungal growth, too. Standard salvage hazard assessment, Captain." Eva nodded, even though Doc couldn't see her. Standard indeed. Salvaging derelict space stations was never a clean job, but the potential reward outweighed the risks, at least in theory. The Psychopomp Station was rumored to have been a cutting-edge research facility before it disappeared decades ago. If the rumors were true, there could be valuable technology and data hidden within its decaying walls. "All right, team, listen up," Eva said, addressing the entire crew. "We stick to the plan. Static, Hammer, you're with me. We secure the main power grid and communications hub. Whisper Doc, you're responsible for environmental monitoring and medical support. Glitch Zero, Ozone and Sawbones, you are in charge of finding any valuable materials. If you find anything of interest, report it immediately. No detours, no heroics. We're in and out as quickly as possible." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Understood." A chorus of affirmations came back through the comms. Eva Rostova, followed by Static and Hammer, stepped out of the airlock and into the Psychopomp Station. The interior was even more dilapidated than the docking bay. The station was designed with long corridors. Most of the lights were either broken or flickering, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. Eva activated her helmet lamp, its beam cutting through the gloom. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. "This place gives a real creepy vibe, Captain," Static muttered, their voice barely audible above the hum of their life support systems. Static was hunched over, their eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. "Buck up, Static," Hammer said, his voice loud and confident. "Nothing here but rust and space ghosts." He hefted his pulse rifle, its barrel gleaming in the dim light. Eva ignored them both, focusing on the task at hand. She consulted the schematic of the station, displayed on her helmet, HUD. The power grid was located several levels down in the station's engineering section. "Let's move," she said, leading the way down the corridor. The further they went, the worse the condition of the station became. Sections of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking their path. They had to detour through cramped maintenance tunnels, squeezing past tangled wires and broken pipes. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the hiss of their respirators and the occasional drip of water. Suddenly, Static stopped dead in their tracks. "Captain," they whispered, "I'm picking up something on the sensors, some kind of energy signature." Eva frowned. "What kind of signature?" "I'm not sure," Static replied, their voice trembling slightly. "It's erratic, unstable, and it's getting closer." Eva tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for her sidearm. "Show me." Static manipulated their wrist-mounted computer, projecting a holographic display in front of Eva. The display showed a map of the station, with a pulsing red dot moving rapidly towards their location. "That's not good," Eva muttered. "No, it's not," Static agreed. "I'm detecting distortions in the space-time continuum. Whatever that is, it's messing with reality." Hammer scoffed. "Space-time continuum? What are you talking about, Static? Are we going to fight a big worm?" "It's not a big worm, Hammer," Eva snapped. "It's something else, something dangerous." She made a quick decision. "We need to get to the power grid and restore full functionality. If we can get the station's systems back online, we might be able to contain whatever that is." "But Captain," Static protested, "that thing is heading right for us. Shouldn't we try to avoid it?" "We don't have time," Eva said firmly. "We need to focus on the mission. Hammer, you're on point. Static, keep your sensors active. Let's move." They pressed on, moving as quickly as they could through the deteriorating corridors. The red dot on Static's display continued to close in. Eva could feel the tension building in the air, a palpable sense of dread that made her skin crawl. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with the source of the disturbance. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a creature from another dimension. It was something far more unsettling. It was a flicker, a shimmering distortion in the air, like heat rising off asphalt on a hot summer day. But this flicker was wrong. It twisted the light around it, creating impossible angles and distorting the surrounding environment. It pulsed with an unnatural energy, emitting a low, throbbing hum that resonated deep within Eva's bones. "What is that?" Hammer whispered, his bravado momentarily forgotten. "I don't know," Eva said, her voice barely audible, "but I don't like it." The flicker began to move, gliding effortlessly towards them. Eva raised her sidearm, aiming at the center of the distortion. "Hold your fire," Static said urgently. "I don't think weapons will do anything to it." Eva hesitated, her finger hovering over the trigger. Static was usually right about these things. As the flicker drew closer, Eva began to see things within the distortion. Fleeting images, glimpses of faces, places, and events that seemed both familiar and alien. She saw a sterile laboratory, filled with humming machines and white-coated scientists. She saw a desolate battlefield, littered with corpses and burning wreckage. She saw a young girl crying in a darkened room. The images were fleeting, fragmented, and deeply disturbing. They seemed to be pulling at something within her, stirring up long-dormant memories and emotions. Suddenly, the flicker stopped, hovering just a few feet in front of them. The humming intensified, and the images within the distortion became more vivid, more intense. Eva felt a sharp pain in her head, a searing pressure that threatened to overwhelm her. She staggered backward, clutching her temples. "Captain," Static cried, reaching out to steady her. "Get away from me," Eva shouted, pushing Static away. "It's inside my head." She dropped to her knees, writhing in agony. The images flooded her mind, a torrent of pain, fear, and despair. She saw her past, her failures, her regrets, all magnified and distorted by the influence of the flicker. She saw the faces of the soldiers she had led to their deaths. She saw the wreckage of the ship she had failed to save. She saw the ghost of her dead husband, his eyes filled with accusation. The flicker was feeding on her fear, amplifying her guilt, and twisting her memories into grotesque parodies of reality. She closed her eyes, trying to shut out the images, but it was no use. They were inside her head, consuming her from the inside out. She screamed, a raw primal scream of pain and terror. Hammer, finally snapping out of his stupor, raised his pulse rifle and opened fire on the flicker. But the energy bolts passed right through it, leaving no visible impact. The flicker continued to hum, its images growing ever more intense. Eva felt herself slipping away, losing her grip on reality. She was no longer Eva Rostova, the captain of the salvage crew. She was just a vessel, a container for the flicker's endless stream of pain and despair. Just when she thought she was about to be consumed entirely, the flicker suddenly vanished. The pain in her head subsided, and the images faded away. Eva lay on the floor, gasping for breath, her body trembling uncontrollably. She was drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. Static rushed to her side, their face etched with concern. "Captain, are you all right? What was that thing?" Eva shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "I don't know," she said, her voice weak and shaky. "But it showed me. Things, terrible things." Hammer lowered his pulse rifle, his face pale. "I've never seen anything like that before," he admitted. Eva struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Static for support. "We need to get out of here," she said. "Now." They turned and fled, retracing their steps as quickly as they could. The silence of the station seemed even more oppressive than before, filled with unspoken dread. As they reached the docking bay, Eva glanced back down the corridor. The shadows seemed to be deeper, darker than they had been before, and she could have sworn she saw a flicker of movement in the distance, a faint shimmering in the air. The Psychopomp Station was not abandoned. It was haunted, and whatever had haunted it before was now wide awake. Eva knew, with a chilling certainty, that their mission had just become a fight for survival. Chapter 2: Residual Signatures. Eva sealed the airlock behind them, the hiss of escaping air a welcome sound. As soon as they were back inside their ship, the Stardust, she ordered Static to initiate a full system diagnostic. She needed to know if whatever had happened back there had affected the ship's systems. "Report," she said, her voice still rough around the edges. Static's fingers flew across the keyboard, their face illuminated by the glow of the monitor. "Engines are nominal, Captain. Life support is stable, but I'm detecting residual energy signatures, similar to what we encountered inside the station. They're faint, but they're there." Eva swore under her breath. "Can you eliminate them?" Static worked rapidly, attempting to isolate and purge. It's proving resistant, almost like it's embedded in the system's code. After a pause, they continued, "It is gone, Captain." Eva didn't like the sound of that. "Keep monitoring. If they reappear, let me know immediately." She turned to Hammer, who was standing guard near the airlock, his pulse rifle still at the ready. "Hammer, check the perimeter. Make sure nothing followed us back." Hammer nodded curtly and disappeared into the ship's narrow corridors. Eva turned to Doc, who was waiting patiently near the medical bay. "Doc, I need a full medical scan. I'm still feeling off." Doc gestured towards the medical bay. "Right this way, Captain. I've already prepped the equipment." Eva followed Doc into the small, cramped space. She lay down on the biobed, feeling the cold metal against her skin. Doc began running the scan, his face a mask of professional detachment. "Heart rate is elevated, blood pressure is high," he murmured, reading the results on the monitor. "Neural activity is unusual. There's some residual energy readings in your brain, similar to what Static detected in the ship's systems." Eva grimaced. "Damn it, what does it mean?" Doc paused, his expression clouding over with concern. "It's difficult to say, Captain. It could be a temporary aftereffect of whatever you experienced back there. Or it could be something more permanent. I need to run some more tests." He spent the next hour running various tests, probing and prodding with his medical instruments. Eva lay there, feeling increasingly anxious. She hated being helpless, but she knew that she had to trust Doc's expertise. Finally, Doc turned off the equipment and removed the sensors from her body. He sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "Well, Captain," he said, "the good news is there's no sign of any lasting physical damage. Your brain is functioning normally as far as I can tell." "And the bad news?" Eva prompted. "The energy signatures are still there," Doc said grimly. "They're faint but persistent, and they seem to be resonating with certain memories, specifically the ones you experienced during the incident back on the station." Eva's blood ran cold. "You mean it's still affecting me?" Doc nodded. "It appears so. I can't say for certain what the long-term effects will be. It could fade away over time, or it could get worse." Eva sat up on the biobed, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to be compromised, not on a mission like this. "Is there anything you can do," she asked, "to get rid of it?" Doc shook his head. "I'm afraid not, Captain. I'm a doctor, not an exorcist. This is beyond my expertise." Eva cursed inwardly. She needed to find a solution, and fast. If this thing continued to mess with her mind, she wouldn't be able to lead her crew effectively, and that could get them all killed. Just then Hammer's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, I've got something. You need to see this." Eva exchanged a worried glance with Doc, then headed out of the medical bay. She found Hammer standing in the ship's small galley, staring intently at one of the monitors. "What is it?" Eva asked. Hammer pointed at the screen. "I've been reviewing the security footage from the exterior cameras. Take a look at this." He rewound the footage, then played it back in slow motion. Eva watched as the stardust detached from the Psychopomp Station. As the ship drifted away, she saw something moving in the shadows near the docking bay. It was a figure, a humanoid shape, shrouded in darkness. It was difficult to make out any details, but Eva could tell that it was watching them. "Is that one of us?" Eva asked. Hammer shook his head. "I don't think so. I checked the crew manifest. Everyone is accounted for." Eva zoomed in on the figure, trying to get a better look. As she did, she noticed something strange. The figure seemed to be distorting the space around it, just like the flicker they had encountered inside the station. "Damn it," Eva muttered. "It followed us." "What is it, Captain?" Hammer asked, his voice filled with apprehension. "I don't know," Eva admitted, "but I don't think it's friendly." She turned to Static, who had joined them in the galley. "Static, can you identify that thing?" Static studied the footage, their fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm running facial recognition software, but it's not getting a match. The image is too distorted. I'm also detecting unusual energy signatures, identical to the ones we encountered on the station and the ones Doc found in the captain." Eva felt a chill run down her spine. This was getting out of control. "All right," she said, her voice firm. "We need to take action. Static, lock down the ship, seal all the bulkheads. I don't want that thing getting inside." Static nodded and began executing the commands. The ship went into lockdown mode, the heavy bulkheads slamming shut with a deafening clang. "Hammer, arm yourself and patrol the corridors," Eva ordered. "If you see anything, report it immediately, but do not engage without my permission." Hammer nodded and disappeared, his pulse rifle held at the ready. Eva turned back to the monitor, staring at the shadowy figure lurking outside the ship. "What do you want?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. As if in response, the figure raised its hand, and in its hand it held a familiar object. It was a photograph of Eva Rostova taken years ago, a photograph of her and her dead husband. Eva gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. How could it have gotten that photograph? It was something she had kept hidden away, something deeply personal and painful. The figure held up the photograph as if taunting her. Then it slowly tore it in half. Eva felt a sharp pain in her head, a searing pressure that mirrored the tearing of the photograph. She staggered backward, clutching her temples. "It's inside my head again," she groaned. Static rushed to her side, their face filled with concern. "Captain, what's wrong? What's happening?" Eva couldn't answer. The pain was too intense. The images flooded her mind, a torrent of grief, guilt, and despair. She saw her husband's face, his eyes filled with love and accusation. She saw the moment he died, the explosion that ripped their ship apart. She heard his last words, his voice choked with pain. The figure was using her own memories against her, twisting them into weapons of psychological torment. It was preying on her deepest fears and regrets, driving her to the brink of madness. She knew that she had to fight back. She couldn't let it control her. But how could she fight an enemy that was inside her own mind? With a supreme effort of will, she managed to regain some control. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "Static," she said, her voice weak but firm. "I need you to do something for me, something dangerous." Static looked at her, their eyes filled with apprehension. "What is it, Captain? Anything." "I need you to access the ship's memory banks," Eva said. "I need you to find the files related to the Psychopomp project. Everything you can find." Static hesitated. "But Captain, those files are classified. They're heavily encrypted. It could take hours, days to crack them." "We don't have hours, Static," Eva said urgently. "We don't have days. That thing is inside my head and it's getting stronger. If we don't figure out what it is and how to stop it, it will destroy us all." Static nodded, their face set with determination. "All right, Captain," they said. "I'll do it, but I can't promise I'll be successful." "Just do your best, Static," Eva said. "That's all I ask." Static turned and hurried towards the ship's computer terminal. Eva watched them go, her heart filled with a mixture of hope and dread. She knew that their survival depended on Static's ability to crack the Psychopomp files, but she also knew that they were running out of time. The figure outside the ship was still watching them, its shadowy form silhouetted against the stars. And in its hand, it now held another photograph. This photograph was of Eva herself, a recent photograph taken just before they had boarded the Stardust. Eva stared at the photograph, her blood running cold. How could it have gotten that photograph? It was impossible. Unless it had been on the ship all along. Chapter 3: The Stowaway. The realization hit Eva like a physical blow. If the entity had a photograph of her taken just before they boarded, it meant it had infiltrated the Stardust before they even left port. It was a stowaway, a silent, invisible passenger lurking in the shadows. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea washing over her. "Static," she said, her voice strained. "Check the crew manifest again. Run a full diagnostic on everyone. I want to know if anyone is acting strange, exhibiting unusual behavior." Static, their fingers still flying across the keyboard, responded without looking up. "Already on it, Captain. But the initial scans came back clean. Everyone's vitals are normal." "Normal isn't good enough," Eva snapped. "I want a deep dive. Psychological profiles, behavioral patterns, anything that seems even slightly out of place. This thing is messing with my head. It could be doing the same to others." As Static continued their work, Eva turned her attention back to the monitor displaying the exterior camera feed. The shadowy figure was still there, motionless, holding her photograph. But something was different. The distortion surrounding it seemed to be growing, becoming more pronounced. The air around the figure shimmered and warped, as if reality itself was unraveling. Suddenly the figure began to move. It didn't walk or float or fly. It simply shifted. One moment it was standing on the hull of the ship, the next it was several meters closer, as if it had teleported. "What the hell?" Hammer's voice crackled over the comms. "Did you see that, Captain? It just jumped." "I saw it, Hammer," Eva replied, her voice tight. "Stay alert, it's getting closer." The figure continued to shift, closing the distance between itself and the ship with unnerving speed. Eva knew it was only a matter of time before it reached the airlock. "Static, how much longer?" she asked, her voice laced with urgency. "Almost there, Captain," Static replied, their brow furrowed in concentration. "I've cracked the first layer of encryption. Just need to bypass the firewall." Eva gripped the edge of the monitor, her knuckles white. She hated waiting, but she knew that rushing Static would only make things worse. All she could do was watch and pray that they could access the Psychopomp files before it was too late. The figure reached the airlock. It stood there for a moment, its shadowy form pressed against the metal door. Then it raised its hand and touched the airlock control panel. "Breach," Hammer shouted over the comms. "It's trying to override the airlock." Eva watched in horror as the airlock control panel flickered and sparked. The red warning lights began to flash, signaling a system malfunction. "Static now," Eva yelled, her voice cracking with desperation. Just as the airlock door began to tremble, Static let out a triumphant cry. "Got it, Captain. I've accessed the Psychopomp files." Eva didn't waste a second. She grabbed a headset and plugged it into the computer terminal. The screen filled with lines of code, technical schematics, and research documents. It was a chaotic mess, but she didn't have time to sort through it. She needed to find something, anything, that could explain what they were dealing with. "Static, filter the search," she commanded. "Focus on subjects related to energy signatures, psychological manipulation, dimensional anomalies, anything that matches what we've experienced." Static quickly adjusted the search parameters. The screen flickered, and a new set of documents appeared. Eva scanned them frantically, her eyes darting across the text. "Subject 47, she muttered, reading a brief summary of one of the documents. "Extreme sensory deprivation, psychological conditioning, attempts to induce altered states of consciousness, resulted in the creation of a psychic echo." The words sent a shiver down her spine. A psychic echo. Could that be what they were dealing with? She opened the document, skimming through the details. Subject 47 was a young test subject who had been subjected to a series of experiments designed to explore the limits of human consciousness. The experiments had been incredibly invasive, pushing the subject to the brink of sanity. According to the document, the researchers had believed that they were on the verge of creating a new form of psychic energy, a pure form of consciousness that could be used to manipulate reality. But the experiments had gone horribly wrong. Subject 47 had become unstable, exhibiting unpredictable and dangerous psychic abilities. The researchers had attempted to contain Subject 47, but it had proven impossible. The subject had managed to escape, vanishing without a trace. The Psychopomp project had been shut down and the station abandoned. Eva closed the document, her mind reeling. It was all starting to make sense. The energy signatures, the psychological manipulation, the dimensional distortions. It was all the work of Subject 47, the psychic echo. But how had it survived for so long, and why was it targeting them? Captain, Static said urgently, I'm picking up a massive energy surge near the airlock. It's about to blow. Eva didn't need to be told twice. She ripped off the headset and grabbed her sidearm. Hammer with me, she shouted. We're going to confront this thing. Eva and Hammer raced through the ship, heading towards the airlock. As they approached, they could hear the sound of metal groaning and twisting. The airlock door was bulging outward, straining against its seals. Eva reached the airlock control panel and slammed her fist against the emergency release button. The inner door hissed open, revealing the outer door, which was now almost completely detached. Beyond the door, she saw the shadowy figure. It was still pressed against the airlock, its hand resting on the damaged control panel. The distortion surrounding it was now so intense that it was difficult to make out any details. Stand down, Eva shouted, raising her sidearm. This is your last warning. The figure didn't respond. It simply raised its head and stared at her with empty, soulless eyes. Eva hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to kill it, but she knew she had no choice. If she didn't stop it now, it would destroy them all. She took a deep breath and squeezed the trigger. The energy bolt struck the figure directly in the chest, but instead of collapsing, the figure simply absorbed the energy. The distortion around it intensified and it began to grow larger, more menacing. "What the?" Hammer exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's not working." Eva fired again and again, but it was no use. The energy bolts had no effect. The figure continued to absorb them, growing stronger with each hit. Eva realized that she was out of options. Conventional weapons were useless against this thing. She needed to find another way to stop it. "Fall back," she ordered. "We need to regroup and come up with a new plan." Eva and Hammer retreated, slamming the inner airlock door shut behind them. They raced back towards the ship's command center, their minds reeling. "What are we going to do, Captain?" Hammer asked, his voice trembling slightly. "We can't fight it, we can't even hurt it." "I don't know," Eva admitted, her voice grim. "But we're not going to give up. We're going to find a way to stop this thing no matter what it takes." As they reached the command center, they found Static hunched over the computer terminal, their face illuminated by the glow of the screen. "Static, what have you got?" Eva asked, her voice filled with urgency. Static looked up, their eyes wide with fear. "Captain," they said, "I think I know how to stop it." Eva's heart leaped with hope. "Tell me." Static took a deep breath. According to the Psychopomp files, Subject 47's psychic abilities are linked to its emotional state. It feeds on fear, anger, and despair. The more negative emotions it absorbs, the stronger it becomes. "So what are you saying?" Eva asked. "We need to make it happy." Static shook their head. "Not exactly. The researchers believed that Subject 47's abilities could be disrupted by positive emotions, love, joy, compassion. They theorized that if they could overwhelm it with positive energy, they could shut down its psychic abilities." Eva frowned. That sounds like a long shot. I know, Static admitted, but it's the only thing we've got. According to the files, the researchers developed a device that could generate a concentrated burst of positive energy. They called it the empathy bomb. Eva's eyes widened. An empathy bomb. It sounded like something out of a science fiction movie. Where is it? She asked. Where the empathy bomb? Static hesitated. According to the files, it's still on the Psychopomp Station, locked away in a secure vault. Eva swore under her breath. Of course it was. All right, she said, her voice grim. We're going back. Chapter 4. Return to Psychopomp. Eva's declaration hung in the air, thick with the weight of its implications. Going back to the Psychopomp Station was practically a death sentence. They had barely escaped with their lives the first time, and now they were willingly returning to face an even greater threat. Hammer looked at Eva as if she'd lost her mind. Are you serious, Captain? We barely made it out of there alive. We're heading back to face that thing. We don't have a choice, Hammer, Eva replied, her voice firm. The empathy bomb is our only chance. If we don't get it, that psychic echo will destroy us all. Static nodded in agreement. The files indicate that the empathy bomb is located in a reinforced vault in the station's research wing. It's designed to withstand extreme conditions. It's likely still functional. Eva looked at Static, appreciating their unwavering support. Static might be anxious and socially awkward, but they were also incredibly brave and resourceful. She trusted their judgment implicitly. All right, Eva said, let's get to it. Static, plot a course back to the Psychopomp Station. Hammer, prep the ship for departure. We're on a tight schedule. As they prepared to return to the station, Eva couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The psychic echo had been waiting for them, manipulating them from the shadows. It had lured them to the station, revealed its existence, and now it was leading them back into its lair. She had to wonder if the empathy bomb was even real, or if it was just another illusion, another trick designed to lure them to their doom. But she couldn't afford to give in to her doubts. She had to trust that the Psychopomp files were accurate, that the empathy bomb existed, and that it could actually stop the psychic echo. If she lost hope, they were all doomed. The Stardust turned back towards the Psychopomp Station, its engines burning bright against the darkness of space. As they approached the station, Eva noticed that the airlock they had damaged earlier was now completely gone. The outer door had been torn away, leaving a gaping hole in the ship's hull. The psychic echo was clearly growing bolder, more aggressive. It was no longer content to lurk in the shadows. It was actively attacking them, challenging them. Eva felt a surge of anger. She was tired of being manipulated, of being a pawn in this twisted game. She was determined to fight back, to take control of the situation. Static, she said. When we dock, I want you to disable the station's internal security systems. If there are any traps or automated defenses, I want them offline before we set foot inside. Copy that, Captain, Static replied. I'll get to work as soon as we're docked. Eva took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew that this was going to be the most dangerous mission of her life, but she was ready. She was determined to stop the psychic echo, no matter what it took. The Stardust docked with the Psychopomp Station, the docking clamps locking into place with a familiar clang. As soon as the connection was secure, Static began working on the station's security systems. "I'm in, Captain," they said, their voice filled with excitement. "The security protocols are surprisingly antiquated. It's like they haven't been updated in decades." "Just disable everything, Static," Eva said. "I don't want any surprises." Static quickly deactivated the station's security cameras, motion sensors, and automated turrets. With the security systems offline, Eva, Hammer, Ozone, and Glitch prepared to disembark. "All right, team, listen up," Eva said. "We stick together. Hammer, you're on point. Ozone, you're responsible for scanning the environment for hazards. Glitch, you are with me, always listen to my commands. If we encounter the psychic echo, do not engage it directly. We focus on getting to the vault and retrieving the empathy bomb. Understood?" A chorus of affirmations came back through the comms. Eva, followed by Hammer, Ozone, and Glitch, stepped out of the airlock and into the Psychopomp Station. The interior of the station was even more dilapidated than before. The corridors were shrouded in darkness, and the air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. As they moved deeper into the station, Eva noticed that the walls were covered with strange symbols and markings. They looked like a combination of ancient runes and complex mathematical equations. "What are those?" Eva asked, pointing at the symbols. "I'm not sure, Captain," Ozone replied, "but I'm picking up some unusual energy readings from them. It's like they're resonating with something." Eva touched one of the symbols, her fingers tracing its intricate lines. As she did, she felt a jolt of energy surge through her body. The images flooded her mind, a torrent of pain, fear, and despair. She staggered backward, clutching her temples. "It's inside my head again," she groaned. "Captain, what's wrong?" Hammer asked, his voice filled with concern. Eva couldn't answer. The psychic echo was attacking her, using her own memories against her. She saw the faces of the people she had failed to save, the wreckage of the ships she had failed to command. She felt a surge of guilt, regret, and self-loathing. She was a failure, a curse to everyone she came into contact with. She didn't deserve to live. Just as she was about to succumb to the psychic echo's influence, she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Glitch, their face etched with concern. "Captain, snap out of it," Glitch said, shaking her gently. "You have to fight it, don't let it control you." Eva looked at Glitch, their words cutting through the fog in her mind. Glitch was right, she couldn't give up. She had to fight back. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. She focused on the mission, on the empathy bomb, on the need to protect her crew. With a supreme effort of will, she managed to push back against the psychic echo's influence. The images faded away, and the pain subsided. "Thanks, Glitch," she said, her voice weak but firm. "I needed that." "Any time, Captain," Glitch replied. "Just don't let it get to you again." Eva nodded. She knew that the psychic echo would continue to attack her, to try to break her down. but she was determined to resist. She wouldn't let it win. They continued moving through the station, following the schematic of the research wing. As they approached the vault, they encountered a series of obstacles: collapsed corridors, booby-trapped doorways, and malfunctioning security systems. Hammer used his strength and his knowledge of explosives to clear the obstacles, while Ozone used his scanners to detect any hidden dangers. Glitch remained close to Eva, providing her with support and encouragement. Finally, they reached the vault door. It was a massive steel barrier, reinforced with multiple layers of armor plating. A complex locking mechanism was embedded in the center of the door. "This is it," Eva said, her voice filled with determination. "The empathy bomb is on the other side of this door." "How are we going to open it?" Hammer asked. "It looks pretty secure." Eva looked at Glitch, a sly grin spreading across her face. "That's where Glitch comes in," she said. "Glitch is an expert at bypassing security systems. If anyone can open this door, it's them." Glitch stepped forward, pulling out a set of specialized tools. They examined the locking mechanism, their fingers flying across the intricate dials and switches. "This is going to take a while," Glitch said. "The locking system is incredibly complex, but I think I can crack it." Eva nodded. "Just do your best, Glitch. We're counting on you." As Glitch worked on the vault door, Eva, Hammer, and Ozone stood guard, their weapons at the ready. The silence of the station was broken only by the click of Glitch's tools and the hum of Ozone's scanners. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness. "What was that?" Hammer asked, his voice filled with alarm. "I don't know," Eva replied. "Static, what's going on?" "I'm detecting a power surge, Captain," Static said over the comms. "The station's energy grid is fluctuating wildly. I think something is interfering with it." "Interfering with it?" Eva asked. "What do you mean?" "I'm not sure, Captain," Static replied. "But I think it's the psychic echo. It's trying to cut us off." Eva cursed under her breath. The psychic echo was trying to isolate them, to separate them from their ship and their support. It was trying to make them vulnerable. "Glitch, how much longer?" Eva asked, her voice filled with urgency. "Almost there, Captain," Glitch replied. "I've bypassed the last security protocol. Just need to enter the master code." Just as Glitch was about to enter the code, a shadowy figure appeared at the end of the corridor. It was the psychic echo, its form more distorted and menacing than ever before. "It's here," Hammer shouted, raising his pulse rifle. "Hold your fire," Eva commanded. "We can't risk damaging the vault door." The psychic echo glided towards them, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. Eva could feel its presence in her mind, a wave of pure malevolence washing over her. She knew that they were running out of time. They had to open the vault door, retrieve the empathy bomb, and stop the psychic echo before it destroyed them all. "Glitch now," she yelled. "Open the damn door." Glitch took a deep breath and entered the master code. The vault door groaned and shuddered, and then, with a deafening clang, it swung open. Eva, Hammer, and Ozone charged into the vault, their weapons at the ready. The interior of the vault was dimly lit, filled with rows of metal shelves. On the shelves were various pieces of scientific equipment, research documents, and experimental devices. In the center of the vault, resting on a pedestal, was a small metallic sphere. It was the empathy bomb. "There it is," Eva exclaimed, pointing at the sphere. "Let's grab it and get out of here." But as they moved towards the empathy bomb, the vault door slammed shut behind them. They were trapped. Chapter 5: The Vault of Secrets. The vault door slammed shut with a deafening thud, the sound echoing through the confined space. Eva whirled around, her heart pounding in her chest. They were trapped, completely cut off from the outside world. "Glitch," she shouted, pounding on the vault door. "Glitch, can you hear me? Open the door." There was no response. "Static, what's going on?" Eva asked over the comms. "Why isn't Glitch answering?" "I'm not sure, Captain," Static replied, their voice filled with static. "I'm detecting a significant energy surge near the vault. It's interfering with our communications. I can barely hear you." Eva swore under her breath. The psychic echo was isolating them, cutting them off from their allies. It was playing with them, toying with their fears. "We need to get out of here," Hammer said, his voice filled with anxiety. "We can't stay trapped in here." "I know," Eva replied, "but how? The door is sealed. We can't break through it." Ozone, his face illuminated by the beam of his helmet lamp, was examining the vault door. "The locking mechanism is completely fried," he said. "It's like something overloaded it with energy." Eva felt a chill run down her spine. The psychic echo was growing stronger, more powerful. It was manipulating the station's systems, turning them against her crew. "There has to be another way out," Eva said, her voice filled with determination. "This vault wasn't designed to be a tomb. There must be an emergency exit, a ventilation shaft, something." They began searching the vault, their eyes scanning every inch of the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The vault was filled with rows of metal shelves, stacked high with scientific equipment, research documents, and experimental devices. As they searched, Eva couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She could feel the psychic echo's presence in her mind, a malevolent force that was growing stronger with each passing moment. Suddenly, Hammer stopped in his tracks. "What is that?" he asked, pointing at a dark corner of the vault. Eva shone her helmet lamp in the direction Hammer was pointing. In the corner, she saw a small metal hatch. It was partially hidden behind a stack of metal crates. "That's it," Eva exclaimed. "That must be the emergency exit." They rushed over to the hatch and examined it closely. It was a small, circular opening, just large enough for a person to crawl through. A simple locking mechanism was located on the outside of the hatch. "I think I can open it," Ozone said, pulling out a set of tools. "It looks like a standard pressure seal." Ozone worked quickly, his fingers flying across the locking mechanism. After a few minutes, he managed to disengage the seal. "It's open," he announced, "but I don't know where it leads." Eva peered into the hatch. It was dark and cramped, but she could see that it led into a narrow tunnel. "It's a ventilation shaft," she said. "It should lead us to another part of the station." "It looks pretty tight," Hammer said, his voice filled with concern. "I'm not sure I can fit through there." "You'll have to try, Hammer," Eva said. "It's our only way out." Eva crawled into the ventilation shaft, followed by Hammer and Ozone. The tunnel was narrow and claustrophobic, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. They crawled for what seemed like an eternity, their bodies aching, their lungs burning. The air was stale and thick with dust, making it difficult to breathe. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Eva began to hear strange noises, whispers, moans, and the faint sound of machinery. The noises seemed to be coming from all directions, filling the tunnel with an unsettling cacophony. "What is that?" Hammer asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Eva replied, "but I don't like it." The noises grew louder, more intense. Eva could feel the psychic echo's presence in her mind, a wave of pure terror washing over her. She saw the faces of the people she had failed to save, the ghosts of her past, the demons of her soul. They were all there, taunting her, tormenting her. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the images, but it was no use. They were inside her head, consuming her from the inside out. She felt herself slipping away, losing her grip on reality. She was no longer Eva Rostova, the captain of the Stardust. She was just a vessel, a container for the psychic echo's endless torment. Just when she thought she was about to be consumed entirely, she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Ozone, his face filled with concern. "Captain, are you all right?" he asked, shaking her gently. "You're starting to hallucinate." Eva looked at Ozone, his words cutting through the fog in her mind. Ozone was right. She couldn't give up. She had to fight back. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. She focused on the mission, on the empathy bomb, on the need to protect her crew. With a supreme effort of will, she managed to push back against the psychic echo's influence. The images faded away, and the noises subsided. "Thanks, Ozone," she said, her voice weak but firm. "I needed that." "Any time, Captain," Ozone replied. "Just keep moving, we're almost there." They continued crawling through the tunnel, their bodies aching, their minds weary. Finally, they reached the end of the shaft. A small metal grate blocked their path. "This must be it," Eva said. "The exit." Ozone examined the grate. It was secured with a series of bolts. "I can remove them," he said, pulling out his tools. "But it's going to take a few minutes." As Ozone worked on the grate, Eva and Hammer stood guard, their weapons at the ready. The noises were still there, but they were fainter now, less intense. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the tunnel into darkness. "Not again," Hammer muttered, his voice filled with frustration. Eva activated her helmet lamp, its beam cutting through the darkness. The tunnel was now even more claustrophobic, the shadows dancing and twisting around them. As they waited for Ozone to remove the grate, Eva couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She could feel the psychic echo's presence in her mind, a malevolent force that was growing ever closer. Suddenly, the grate began to rattle. The bolts were being loosened, one by one. "Almost there," Ozone said, his voice filled with determination. Just as the last bolt was removed, A shadowy figure appeared at the end of the tunnel. It was the psychic echo, its form more distorted and menacing than ever before. "It's here," Hammer shouted, raising his pulse rifle. "Hold your fire," Eva commanded. "We can't risk damaging the exit." The psychic echo glided towards them, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. Eva could feel its presence in her mind, a wave of pure malevolence washing over her. She knew that they were running out of time. They had to escape from the tunnel and find a way to stop the psychic echo before it destroyed them all. Ozone pushed the grate aside, revealing a small opening. Beyond the opening, Eva could see a dimly lit corridor. "Go," she shouted. "Get out of here." Hammer squeezed through the opening, followed by Ozone. Eva was the last one to leave the tunnel. As she turned to follow her crew, the psychic echo lunged at her, its shadowy hand reaching out to grab her. Eva ducked, narrowly avoiding the psychic echo's grasp. She scrambled through the opening, landing hard on the floor of the corridor. She turned around and slammed the grate shut, sealing the psychic echo inside the tunnel. "Let's go," she shouted, grabbing her weapon. "We need to find Static and Glitch." Eva, Hammer, and Ozone raced down the corridor, their hearts pounding in their chests. They had escaped from the vault, but they were far from safe. The psychic echo was still out there, waiting for them, and it was growing stronger with each passing moment. Chapter 6: Glitch's Scream. Eva, Hammer, and Ozone sprinted through the dimly lit corridor, the urgency of their situation driving them forward. The psychic echo was trapped for now, but they knew it wouldn't remain contained for long. Its influence permeated the station, and it could likely manifest anywhere at any time. Finding Static and Glitch became their top priority. "Static, Glitch, do you read?" Eva barked into her comm, her voice tight with concern. "Report your status." Only Static answered. The interference was getting worse, making communication nearly impossible. Eva feared the worst. "They could be anywhere," Hammer muttered, his pulse rifle held at the ready. "This station is a maze." "We need to get back to the command center," Eva replied. "That's our best bet for re-establishing contact and figuring out a plan." They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, their senses on high alert. The station seemed to be actively working against them. Sections of the ceiling had collapsed, forcing them to crawl through debris-filled tunnels. Corridors twisted and turned in illogical directions, leading them in circles. The oppressive silence was broken only by the hiss of their respirators and the occasional drip of water. The psychic echo continued to prey on Eva's mind, feeding her with distorted memories and terrifying visions. She saw herself failing, her crew dying, the stardust consumed by the void of space. She fought back with every ounce of willpower she possessed, clinging to the hope that they could still salvage the mission. As they rounded a corner, they came across a gruesome sight. A group of mutated rats, their bodies swollen and grotesque, were feasting on something in the middle of the corridor. As they approached, Eva realized that the creatures were tearing apart what was left of an automated maintenance drone, the kind that could be found sweeping corridors or cleaning vents. "Keep your distance," Ozone warned. Those things are highly aggressive, and who knows what kind of diseases they carry. They carefully skirted around the rats, their weapons trained on the creatures. As they passed, Eva noticed something strange. One of the rats was wearing a small, metallic device around its neck. It looked like a miniature version of the Psychopomp Station's control units. "What the hell?" Eva muttered, her eyes narrowing. "What is that thing doing with a control unit?" She reached out to grab the rat, but it scurried away, disappearing into the shadows. Eva cursed under her breath. The psychic echo was using the rats as its pawns, turning them into living extensions of its will. "We need to be careful," she said. "Those rats are more dangerous than they look." They continued on their way, their pace quickening as they approached the command center. As they neared their destination, they heard a sound that made their blood run cold. A scream. It was Glitch's scream. Eva's heart leaped into her throat. "Glitch!" she yelled into her comm. "Glitch, where are you? What's happening?" The only answer was static. "We need to hurry," Eva said, her voice filled with panic. "Something happened to Glitch." They sprinted the last few meters to the command center, bursting through the door with their weapons raised. The scene that greeted them was one of utter chaos. The command center was in ruins. Consoles were smashed, wires were sparking, and the air was thick with smoke. Static was slumped over a computer terminal, their body twitching uncontrollably. Glitch was nowhere to be seen. "Static," Eva cried, rushing to their side. "Static, what happened? Where's Glitch?" Static groaned, their eyes fluttering open. They looked at Eva with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Captain," they whispered, their voice weak and raspy, It took Glitch." "What took Glitch?" Eva demanded, her voice rising in anger. "What happened here?" Static struggled to sit up, their body trembling. I don't know," they said. "We were trying to contact you, but the interference was too strong. Then the lights went out, and something attacked us." "What did it look like?" Eva pressed. "Was it the psychic echo?" Static shook their head. "No," they said. "It was different. It was like a shadow, but it was alive. It moved too fast to see clearly, and then Glitch was gone." Eva's mind raced. A shadow. What was that supposed to mean? Was the psychic echo evolving, manifesting in new and more terrifying forms? "Where did it take Glitch?" Eva asked. "Did you see where it went?" Static shook their head again. I don't know," they said. "It just vanished with Glitch." Eva felt a surge of despair. Glitch was gone, lost somewhere in the depths of the Psychopomp Station, and she had no idea how to find them. "We need to find Glitch," Eva said, her voice filled with determination. "We can't leave them behind." "But Captain," Hammer protested, "what about the empathy bomb? What about stopping the psychic echo?" "Glitch is more important," Eva replied. "We're a team. We don't leave anyone behind." She turned to Static. "Can you still access the station's systems? Can you track Glitch's location?" Static nodded weakly. I think so," they said, "but it's going to be difficult. The systems are badly damaged." "Just do your best, Static," Eva said. "That's all I ask." Static began working on the computer terminal. their fingers flying across the keyboard. Eva, Hammer, and Ozone stood guard, their weapons at the ready. As they waited, Eva couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The psychic echo was out there, somewhere in the station, and it was playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. Suddenly, Static let out a gasp. "I've got them," they exclaimed. "I've located Glitch's transponder signal." Eva's heart leaped with hope. "Where are they?" she asked. "Where did it take them?" Static's face clouded over with concern. "They're in the Subject 47 containment cell," they said, "deep within the station's research wing." Eva's blood ran cold. The Subject 47 containment cell. That was where the psychic echo had been imprisoned before it escaped. It was the most dangerous place in the entire station. "We need to get to them, Eva," Static said, "before it's too late." Chapter 7: Into the Nightmare. The words Subject 47 containment cell hung in the air, each syllable a chilling reminder of the horrors they faced. Eva knew that going back to the research wing, and specifically to the cell that once held the source of their torment, was a gamble of the highest order. It was walking directly into the heart of the nightmare. Yet, abandoning Glitch wasn't an option. "Static, give me a route," Eva commanded, her voice regaining its usual steel. "Fastest way to the Subject 47 cell, accounting for any compromised sections or known threats." Static worked feverishly, their fingers dancing across the damaged keyboard. The command center was a wreck, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burnt plastic. But Static, despite their injuries and obvious fear, was a rock, a vital link to the station's crumbling infrastructure. "Route plotted, Captain," Static announced, a holographic display flickering to life, projecting a path across the command center's ruined floor. "It's convoluted. Several sections are completely offline, requiring manual traversal through maintenance tunnels and abandoned labs. I'm also detecting increased energy signatures along the proposed route. The psychic echo is definitely active in those areas." Eva studied the route, her brow furrowed in concentration. It was a dangerous path, fraught with unknown perils, but it was their only chance. "Hammer, Ozone, gear up," Eva ordered. "We're going in. Static, stay here and monitor our progress. Keep those systems running, even if you have to MacGyver them back together with duct tape and sheer willpower." Static managed a weak smile. "Will do, Captain. Stay safe." Eva, Hammer, and Ozone moved out, following the holographic route projected by Static. The corridors were darker and more oppressive than before, the shadows seeming to writhe and twist with malevolent intent. The psychic echo was intensifying its assault, bombarding Eva with visions of failure, loss, and unimaginable horrors. She clenched her jaw, focusing on the task at hand, refusing to succumb to its influence. As they navigated the treacherous route, they encountered a series of obstacles and threats. Collapsed sections of the station forced them to crawl through tight spaces, their bodies scraped and bruised. Automated security systems, reactivated by the psychic echo, unleashed torrents of laser fire, forcing them to take cover and return fire. And the mutated rats, now sporting crude cybernetic implants, swarmed them in relentless waves, their teeth and claws razor-sharp. Hammer's brute strength and ozone scanner skills proved invaluable in overcoming these challenges. Hammer blasted through obstacles with his pulse rifle, while ozone detected hidden traps and provided early warnings of approaching enemies. Eva, relying on her years of experience and tactical acumen, coordinated their movements and kept them focused on their objective. As they approached the research wing, the psychic echo's influence grew even stronger. Eva's mind was flooded with images of the experiments conducted on Subject 47, the horrifying procedures, the relentless torment. She saw the faces of the researchers, their eyes filled with a disturbing mix of scientific curiosity and sadistic glee. She felt a surge of anger, a burning desire to make them pay for their crimes. But she knew that giving in to her emotions would only make her more vulnerable to the psychic echo's control. She had to remain calm, focused, and in control. They reached the entrance to the research wing, a heavily fortified doorway sealed with multiple layers of security. The door was locked, the control panel offline. "Stand back," Hammer said, hefting his pulse rifle. "I'm going to blow it open." "Wait," Eva said, holding up her hand. "There might be another way." She examined the doorway, her eyes scanning for any hidden access points or vulnerabilities. She noticed a small ventilation shaft located near the ceiling. "Ozone, can you scan that ventilation shaft?" she asked. "See if it leads anywhere useful." Ozone activated his scanner, its beam sweeping across the ventilation shaft. "It leads into the research wing, Captain," he announced. "It's a tight fit, but we might be able to squeeze through." "All right," Eva said. "That's our way in. Hammer, give us a boost." Hammer crouched down, allowing Eva and Ozone to climb onto his back. They reached the ventilation shaft and pried open the grate, revealing a narrow, dark tunnel. "After you," Eva said, gesturing to Ozone. Ozone squeezed into the tunnel, followed by Eva. The ventilation shaft was cramped and claustrophobic, forcing them to crawl on their hands and knees. The air was thick with the smell of chemicals and decay. As they crawled through the tunnel, they began to hear a faint sound in the distance. A low, guttural moaning, like someone in immense pain. "What is that?" Hammer whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Eva replied, "but I don't like it." The moaning grew louder, more intense. Eva could feel the psychic echo's presence in her mind, a wave of pure dread washing over her. She saw Glitch's face, their eyes filled with terror, their body contorted in agony. She knew that they were in danger, that the psychic echo was torturing them. She pushed herself forward, crawling faster, determined to reach Glitch before it was too late. They reached the end of the ventilation shaft and peered out into the research wing. The scene that greeted them was one of utter desolation. The research wing was in ruins, its corridors littered with broken equipment, shattered glass, and pools of blood. The air was thick with the stench of death and decay. As they moved deeper into the research wing, they began to see signs of the experiments that had been conducted there. Test chambers filled with grotesque specimens, surgical tables stained with blood, and walls covered with incomprehensible equations. The psychic echo's influence was overwhelming, bombarding Eva with a barrage of horrifying images and emotions. She saw Subject 47 being tortured, its mind broken, its body twisted. She felt its pain, its fear, its despair. She staggered backward, clutching her temples, struggling to maintain her sanity. "We're almost there, Captain," Ozone said, his voice filled with concern. "The Subject 47 containment cell is just around the corner." Eva took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to face. She knew that the containment cell was the heart of the nightmare, the place where the psychic echo had been born. It was going to be a test of her will, her courage, and her sanity. They rounded the corner and came face to face with the Subject 47 containment cell. It was a large, cylindrical chamber, sealed with a thick, blast-proof door. The door was covered with strange symbols and markings, similar to the ones they had seen earlier. In the center of the chamber, they saw Glitch. They were suspended in midair, their body contorted in an unnatural pose. Their eyes were closed, and their face was contorted in a mask of agony. Standing in front of Glitch, its shadowy form flickering and distorting the light, was the psychic echo. It was more powerful than ever before, its presence radiating an aura of pure malevolence. "Glitch," Eva cried, her voice filled with terror. "What are you doing to them?" The psychic echo turned its head and stared at Eva with empty, soulless eyes. "I am showing them the truth," it said, its voice a chilling whisper. "The truth about their fears, their weaknesses, their failures." Eva raised her pulse rifle and aimed at the psychic echo. "Let them go," she commanded, "or I'll destroy you." The psychic echo chuckled, a cold, mocking sound. "You cannot destroy me," it said. "I am a part of you. I am your fears, your doubts, your regrets. I am everything you try to deny." Eva squeezed the trigger, unleashing a torrent of energy bolts at the psychic echo. But the bolts passed right through it, leaving no visible impact. The psychic echo raised its hand, and Glitch's body began to convulse. They screamed in agony, their voice echoing through the chamber. "Stop it," Eva cried, her voice cracking with desperation. "Please stop hurting them." The psychic echo smiled, a cruel, twisted expression. "I will stop," it said, "if you do what I ask." Eva hesitated. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I want you to join me," the psychic echo said. "I want you to embrace your fears, to surrender to your darkness. Together, we can become unstoppable." Eva stared at the psychic echo, her mind reeling. It was offering her a choice, a chance to become something powerful, something terrifying. But she knew that if she accepted, she would lose everything. Her friends, her crew, her very soul. She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with determination. "Never," she said. "I will never join you. I will fight you until my last breath." The psychic echo's smile faded, replaced by a look of pure rage. "Then you will die," it said, "and so will your friends." The psychic echo raised its hand again, and Glitch's body began to glow with an eerie light. They screamed louder than ever before, their voice filled with unimaginable pain. Eva knew that she had to act, and she had to act fast. She couldn't let the psychic echo torture Glitch any longer. She had to find a way to stop it, even if it meant sacrificing herself. She looked at Hammer and Ozone, their faces filled with fear and determination. She knew that they were counting on her, that they believed in her. She took a deep breath and made a decision. She was going to use the empathy bomb. Chapter 8: The Truth Within. Eva's declaration to use the empathy bomb hung in the air, a stark contrast to Glitch's agonizing screams that echoed throughout the containment cell. The sphere was still locked away in the vault, and they were trapped here with the very entity they needed to unleash it on. Eva had no idea how she was going to get to it, or even if it was still possible. The psychic echo, however, seemed unfazed. It continued to torture Glitch, its eyes locked on Eva. It seemed to enjoy her internal conflict, her desperation. "You intend to use that device?" The psychic echo's voice dripped with amusement. "Do you truly believe that such a sentimental gesture will affect me? I am woven from the fabric of fear, the bedrock of despair. Your paltry empathy is but a fleeting breeze against a hurricane." Eva ignored the psychic echo's taunts. She couldn't let it get inside her head. She needed a plan, and she needed it now. She glanced at Hammer and Ozone, their faces etched with worry. They were ready to follow her lead, but they were also clearly out of their depth. "Ozone," Eva said, her voice low but firm. "Can you scan the station's layout from here? I need to know if there's a way to access the vault remotely, maybe through a maintenance tunnel or a service shaft." Ozone nodded and activated his scanner. He swept the beam across the room, his face illuminated by the device's glow. "I'm detecting a network of tunnels beneath the research wing, Captain," he announced. "They appear to connect to various parts of the station, including the engineering section. It's possible that they lead to the vault, but I can't be certain." "It's worth a shot," Eva said. "Hammer, can you rig some kind of distraction? Something to draw the psychic echo's attention away from Glitch, even for a few seconds." Hammer cracked his knuckles, a grim expression on his face. "I've got a few tricks up my sleeve, Captain. Nothing fancy, but it might buy us some time." Eva took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to do. She knew that this was a long shot, but it was the only option they had. "All right," she said. "Let's move. Ozone, lead the way. Hammer, you're with me." Ozone pointed towards a small access panel located near the floor. "The entrance to the tunnels is behind that panel, Captain," he said. "It's going to be a tight squeeze." Eva nodded and approached the access panel. She pried it open with her hands, revealing a dark, cramped tunnel. "Hammer, cover me," she said. "I'm going in." Eva squeezed into the tunnel, followed by Hammer. The tunnel was narrow and claustrophobic, forcing them to crawl on their hands and knees. The air was stale and thick with dust. As they crawled through the tunnel, Hammer began to set up his distraction. He pulled out a small device from his pack, a grenade modified to emit a series of loud bangs and bright flashes. "This should keep its attention for a minute or two," Hammer said, arming the device. "But don't expect miracles." They reached a junction in the tunnel where Ozone was waiting for them. "The tunnels split in two directions, Captain," he said. "One leads towards the engineering section, the other towards the core of the station. I'm not sure which one leads to the vault." Eva hesitated. They couldn't afford to waste time exploring dead ends. She needed to make a decision, and she needed to make it fast. She closed her eyes, focusing on the empathy bomb. She tried to imagine the device, its purpose, its location. She reached out with her mind, trying to sense its presence. Suddenly, she felt a jolt of energy, a faint but distinct signal. It was coming from the tunnel that led towards the engineering section. "That way," Eva said, pointing towards the tunnel. "I think the empathy bomb is that way." They continued crawling through the tunnel, their pace quickening as they neared their destination. The moaning sound of Glitch's pain still echoed faintly in their ears, a constant reminder of the stakes. As they approached the engineering section, they began to hear a new sound, the hum of machinery. The tunnels were becoming more complex, more industrial. They passed by a series of pipes, wires, and conduits, all humming with energy. They reached a large, open chamber, filled with a tangle of machinery. The air was thick with the smell of oil and metal. "This must be the engineering section," Ozone said, his voice filled with relief. "But where's the vault?" Eva scanned the chamber, her eyes searching for any clue. She noticed a small, unmarked door located in the corner of the room. "That door," she said, pointing towards it. "I think it leads to the vault." They approached the door and examined it closely. It was made of reinforced steel, and it was sealed with a complex locking mechanism. "This is going to be difficult," Hammer said, his voice filled with concern. "This door is designed to keep people out." Eva looked at the locking mechanism, her mind racing. She needed to find a way to open it, and she needed to find it fast. Suddenly, she noticed a small access panel located near the door's control panel. The panel was slightly ajar, as if someone had been tampering with it. "That's it," Eva exclaimed. "Someone's already tried to open this door. Maybe they left something behind." She pried open the access panel, revealing a tangle of wires and circuits. She noticed a small, metallic device plugged into the control panel. It looked like a bypass module, designed to override the locking mechanism. "Someone's already been here," Eva said. "They were trying to break into the vault." She hesitated. She didn't know who had placed the bypass module or why. It could be a trap. But she didn't have a choice. She had to trust that whoever had placed the module had good intentions. She took a deep breath and activated the bypass module. The locking mechanism whirred and clicked, and then, with a loud clang, the door swung open. Eva, Hammer, and Ozone charged into the vault, their weapons at the ready. They found themselves in a dimly lit room, filled with rows of metal shelves. On the shelves were various pieces of scientific equipment, research documents, and experimental devices. In the center of the room, resting on a pedestal, was a small metallic sphere. It was the empathy bomb. "There it is," Eva exclaimed. "Let's grab it and get out of here." She rushed towards the pedestal, her hand reaching for the empathy bomb. But just as she was about to touch it, a voice echoed through the room. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Eva froze, her blood running cold. She turned around and saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was Dr. Aris Thorne, the lead researcher of the Psychopomp project. You, Eva exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief. But you're dead. Thorn chuckled, a cold, mocking sound. Death is a state of mind, my dear, he said, and I am very much alive. Chapter 9, A Spectral Offer. The apparition of Dr. Aris Thorn stood in the doorway, his spectral form shimmering in the dim light. His appearance was unsettling. His eyes, once filled with the spark of scientific curiosity, were now hollow and devoid of life, like dark pits in his skeletal face. The man, or whatever he was now, exuded an aura of cold calculation, of a mind twisted by decades of obsession. You cannot possibly believe this will work, Eva Rostova, Thorn said, his voice a ghostly whisper that seemed to claw at the edges of her mind. This empathy bomb is nothing more than a fool's errand, a sentimental gesture against a force of pure, unadulterated dread. Eva's mind reeled. Thorn, alive, dead, neither. The man had been a central figure in the Psychopomp project, and his death, years ago, had been a matter of record. But here he was somehow mocking them with his very existence. "What do you want, Thorn?" Eva demanded, trying to sound confident, though the sight of the man paralyzed her with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. Thorn tilted his head, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "Why, I want to assist you, of course, to help you understand the true nature of this affliction, to guide you to a solution." "And why would we trust you?" Hammer growled, his pulse rifle trained on Thorn. "Because I understand the enemy," Thorn replied, gesturing towards the psychic echo currently torturing Glitch. "I was the one who created it, you see. I understand its weaknesses, its strengths, and more importantly, I know how to control it." Eva's mind raced. Control, this was a new twist. Control, you want to control Subject 47. Thorn nodded. "Indeed, I have spent decades in the ether observing, studying, and now I have a plan. A way to merge with Subject 47 to become one with it, to transcend this mortal coil." "You're insane," Eva said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Thorn chuckled, the sound like ice cracking. "Perhaps, but madness often births the greatest discoveries, wouldn't you agree?" He took a step forward, his spectral form flickering in the dim light. "The empathy bomb is useless, Eva. A distraction, a waste of time. It will only serve to enrage Subject 47 and hasten your demise." "Lies," Eva hissed, her hand still reaching for the empathy bomb. "We need this." Thorn's gaze shifted to the sphere, his eyes narrowing. "Then let me show you the truth." He raised his hand, and a wave of energy surged through the vault. The metallic sphere on the pedestal began to vibrate, its surface glowing with an ethereal light. Suddenly, Eva felt a sharp pain in her head, a searing pressure that threatened to overwhelm her. The images flooded her mind, a torrent of fear, despair, and regret. She saw the faces of her failures, the ghosts of her past, the demons of her soul. She staggered backward, clutching her temples. The psychic echo. "No," Thorn said, his voice laced with triumph. "This is something more. This is the true power of the empathy bomb. It is not a weapon of love as you foolishly believe. It is a weapon of truth. It reveals the darkness within." Eva looked at the empathy bomb, her eyes widening in horror. The sphere was no longer a source of hope. It was a tool of torment, a device that amplified the psychic echo's influence, feeding it with the user's deepest fears. The vault began to shake, as if the station itself was reacting to this violation. The images in Eva's head intensified, consuming her thoughts. She saw the faces of her crew, their eyes filled with terror. She saw herself as a weak and flawed leader, failing them all. Hammer and Ozone were struggling to maintain their ground, their faces contorted with pain. Thorn's influence was clearly not limited to Eva. "Hammer, Ozone, get out of here." Eva managed to shout through the pain. "Get to static, warn them." Hammer looked at Eva, his face filled with confusion. "But what about you, Captain?" "Go," Eva roared. "I'll hold them off, now go." Hammer and Ozone hesitated for a moment, then turned and fled, disappearing into the darkness. Eva was alone with Thorn. "Now," Thorn said, his voice dripping with satisfaction, "it is time for us to see what you truly are." He raised his hand again, and the empathy bomb unleashed its full power. The images flooded Eva's mind, a torrent of pain, despair, and regret. She saw her husband, her crew, all consumed by the darkness. She felt herself slipping away, losing her grip on reality. She was no longer Eva Rostova, the captain of the Stardust. She was just a vessel, a container for the psychic echo's endless torment. But as the darkness closed in, she remembered Glitch's words, "Don't let it control you." She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. She focused on the mission, on the need to protect her crew. With a supreme effort of will, she managed to push back against the psychic echo's influence. The images began to fade, and the pain subsided. Thorn looked at her, his eyes filled with surprise. You are resisting. How is this possible?" "You underestimated me, Thorn," Eva said, her voice filled with determination. "I'm not afraid of the darkness. I have faced it before, and I will face it again." She took a step forward, her hand reaching for the empathy bomb. "I know what you are," she said. "You are a parasite, a twisted reflection of Subject 47, and I am going to stop you." She reached for the sphere, bracing herself for whatever came next. She would have to trust her instincts now. The only way to defeat the psychic echo was to somehow break its link to Thorn and the empathy bomb. She would do anything to save Glitch and the crew, even if it meant sacrificing herself. As her fingers brushed against the cold metallic surface of the empathy bomb, a wave of energy surged through her body, a wave of darkness and something else. Something that, for a brief moment, gave her hope. The coldness of Thorn's gaze seemed to falter. The vault went dark. And then everything exploded. Chapter 10: Becoming the Bomb. The explosion was not a physical one, but a blinding surge of energy that ripped through the vault, obliterating everything within. The metallic sphere, the empathy bomb, had unleashed its full power, a cataclysmic wave of psychic force. Eva felt the raw energy coursing through her veins, a symphony of both agonizing pain and exhilarating clarity. When her vision cleared, the vault was different, not physically but perceptually. The air thrummed with an almost visible energy. The walls seemed to shift, the familiar contours of the room bending and warping in impossible ways. The darkness that had plagued the station seemed to recede, replaced by a chaotic yet vibrant light. Thorne, the ghostly researcher, was no longer standing in the doorway. He was gone, dissipated by the force of the empathy bomb. But his absence brought no sense of victory. The air was charged with his presence, with his influence. Eva tried to take a breath but found the air was heavy. She could still feel the psychic echo's presence, but it was different now, fragmented, weaker. The link between Thorne and the echo had been severed as she had hoped, but the echo was still there, a wounded animal lashing out in desperation. And in that moment the realization hit her. The power hadn't destroyed the psychic echo, it had simply changed its host. The empathy bomb hadn't eliminated Subject 47, it had merged with it, and in that process it had also merged with her. Eva was the link now, the nexus, the containment, the terrifying truth hammered at her consciousness. She was the empathy bomb. A new wave of images slammed into her mind. Not the distorted, fear-fueled nightmares of before, but the raw, unfiltered memories of Subject 47. The pain of isolation, the terror of the experiments, the longing for connection. She saw the child's face, the eyes wide with fear, the desperate yearning for understanding. She understood now. Thorne hadn't wanted to control the psychic echo. He had wanted to become it. And in doing so, he had wanted to control the combined power of the echo and the empathy bomb, the ultimate weapon. But he hadn't anticipated this, the empathetic response, the flood of compassion that had been unleashed by the sphere. Captain. The sound of Hammer's voice ripped through the psychic maelstrom, grounding Eva in the present. She turned and saw Hammer and Ozone standing in the doorway, their faces etched with concern. They had survived the explosion, a testament to their resilience and the station's crumbling construction. "Are you all right?" Hammer asked, his voice filled with apprehension. "What happened in there?" Eva struggled to speak, the words catching in her throat. She tried to explain, to articulate the impossible burden she now carried, but the complexity of the situation, the sheer scale of what she was experiencing, made it impossible. "Glitch," she managed to say, her voice raspy. "We have to find Glitch." "What about the thing?" Ozone asked, his eyes darting nervously around the vault. "Did you get rid of it?" Eva didn't answer. She knew that the psychic echo, now intertwined with her very being, would still be looking for her, for Glitch. She also knew that she had to find a way to use this newfound power, this terrifying empathy, to help Glitch. "I'm different now," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "I can feel things I couldn't before." She closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind. She focused on Glitch on the image static's diagnostic scan. Then she focused on Glitch's emotions: pain, fear, isolation. She opened her eyes, her gaze locking onto a specific point in the ceiling. "They're still alive. We need to go, now." Without waiting for a response, Eva turned and sprinted out of the vault. Hammer and Ozone exchanged a bewildered glance, but they followed her without hesitation. They raced through the corridors, following the psychic echo's guidance. Eva, driven by a new understanding of the station's structure, her emotions, and the very nature of fear itself, navigated the treacherous paths with an uncanny accuracy. The psychic echo's influence, while still present, was no longer an overwhelming force. She was able to anticipate its movements, to predict its attacks. They reached the Subject 47 containment cell. The blast-proof door was still sealed, but Eva could sense Glitch's presence on the other side. Glitch was still alive, but their condition was rapidly deteriorating. "Hammer," Eva said, "get the door open." Hammer, using the last of his explosives, blasted the door open. They rushed into the cell. The sight that greeted them was horrific. Glitch was suspended in midair, their body contorted in an unnatural pose. Their eyes were closed, and their face was contorted in a mask of agony. "Glitch!" Eva cried, rushing towards them. As she approached, the psychic echo appeared, its form flickering and distorting the light. It was no longer a shadowy figure, but a manifestation of Glitch's own worst fears. A broken doll, a reflection of their vulnerability. "You cannot save them," the psychic echo whispered. "Their pain is eternal, they are mine." Eva looked at Glitch, her heart breaking. She knew that she had to act, and she had to act fast. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her empathy. She focused on Glitch's pain, their fear, their longing for connection. She poured all of her compassion, all of her love into them. The psychic echo recoiled, its form flickering violently. It was not expecting this. It was used to feeding on fear, not compassion. It was not prepared for the onslaught of empathy. "What are you doing?" The psychic echo hissed, its voice filled with rage. "You cannot do this." Eva ignored it. She kept pouring her empathy into Glitch, focusing on their pain, their fear, their longing. She wanted to show them that they weren't alone. She wanted to show them that there was still hope. As she channeled the power of the empathy bomb, the air in the cell began to glow with a warm, radiant light. The psychic echo screamed in agony, its form dissolving before their eyes. Glitch's body began to glow, their eyes fluttered open, and a faint smile appeared on their lips. "Captain," Glitch whispered, their voice weak but clear. Chapter 11: The Tide of Compassion. Glitch's whispered greeting was a beacon of hope, a fragile victory amidst the encroaching darkness. The warmth that radiated from them, the energy that pulsed through the cell, was a testament to Eva's empathy, to the power she now wielded. The psychic echo, that embodiment of fear and despair, was crumbling, weakened by the tide of compassion. But the victory was not complete. The psychic echo, though subdued, was not destroyed. It was a part of her now, woven into the fabric of her being. The battle had shifted, but the war was far from over. As Glitch descended gently to the floor, their eyes still filled with a mix of confusion and wonder, Eva turned her attention to the task at hand. The station was still a death trap. The stardust was far away, and the entity, though diminished, was still present. "Glitch," Eva said, her voice soft, "are you all right?" Glitch nodded, their gaze darting around the cell, their eyes settling on Hammer and Ozone. I don't know," they said, their voice hoarse. "It was terrible. I was in so much pain. It's over now, Eva said, placing a reassuring hand on Glitch's shoulder. You're safe. Glitch looked at Eva, their eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Captain. I don't know what you did, but thank you. Eva smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. We're a team, Glitch. We always have each other's backs. She turned to Hammer and Ozone. We need to get out of here. The psychic echo is still out there and it's going to be looking for us. But what about the empathy bomb? Ozone asked. What do we do with it? Eva hesitated. She had become the empathy bomb, a vessel for its power. The sphere that was once a mere object no longer held any meaning. I don't know, she admitted. I haven't figured it all out yet. Well, we can't just leave it here, Hammer said. It's too dangerous. It could fall into the wrong hands. We could destroy it, Ozone suggested. Blow it up and be done with it. Eva shook her head. No, we can't destroy it, not yet. We don't know what it is capable of, and we don't know if we can control it. She looked at Glitch, who was still recovering from their ordeal. We need to get you to safety. Then we'll figure out what to do next. They turned and left the Subject 47 containment cell, leaving behind the lingering traces of the psychic echo. As they made their way through the station, they encountered even more dangers. Mutated creatures, malfunctioning security systems, and the remnants of the psychic echo, all trying to stop them. Eva, guided by her newfound empathetic abilities, was able to anticipate these threats. She could sense the danger, the fear, the intentions of their enemies. This enabled her to avoid them, to navigate the treacherous corridors with greater precision. They finally reached the docking bay, where the Stardust was waiting. But as they approached the airlock, they were confronted with a new threat. A figure emerged from the shadows, its face obscured by the dim light. It was Static. Static, Eva exclaimed, relief flooding her. You're alive. Static's face was pale, their eyes filled with fear. Captain, they said, their voice trembling, you need to leave now. What's wrong? Eva asked. What happened? Static hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. It's taken over, they said. The psychic echo, it's in the ship. Eva's heart sank. The Stardust, their only means of escape, was compromised. She cursed the fate that followed them. What do you mean, taken over? Hammer asked, his voice filled with alarm. Static took a deep breath, as if steeling themselves for something difficult. It's in the systems, they said. It's everywhere. I can't control the ship anymore. Did it hurt you? Glitch asked, their voice filled with concern. Static shook their head. No, they said, not physically, but it's changed me. I don't feel like myself anymore. Eva realized the gravity of the situation. The psychic echo, still embedded within her, had found a way to reach the Stardust through Static. It had found a new way to cause fear and manipulate those around them. What are we going to do? Ozone asked, his voice filled with despair. We're trapped. Eva looked at her crew, their faces etched with fear, their bodies weary from the ordeal. She knew that she had to make a decision, and she had to make it fast. We can't give up, she said, her voice filled with determination. We have to fight. We're not going to let this thing win. She looked at Static, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Static," she said, "I need you to do something for me." Static looked at her, their eyes filled with confusion. "Anything, Captain." "I need you to try to regain control of the ship," Eva said. "I know it's going to be difficult, but we need to try." Static hesitated, but the psychic echo, it's so powerful. "I know," Eva said, "but we can't give up. If we don't try, we're doomed." Static took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, Captain," they said. "I'll do it." Static turned and headed towards the ship's control panel. Eva, Hammer, Ozone, and Glitch headed for the airlock, knowing that their escape was no longer a sure thing. They were going to have to fight their way out, one way or another. Just as they were about to enter the airlock, they heard a voice over the comms. It was Static's voice, but it was Static's voice. It was the psychic echo. "You cannot escape," the voice said, a chilling whisper. "This is your prison now. You are all mine." Chapter 12, A Puppet's Voice. The voice, a distorted imitation of Static's, sent a fresh wave of dread through Eva. The psychic echo had succeeded in infiltrating the Stardust, and now it was using their friend as a puppet, their own voice to spread its chilling message. "How did it get to the comms?" Hammer demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. Eva knew it was a rhetorical question. The answer was obvious. The echo was everywhere, woven into the station's systems, just like it was now intertwined with her own. "Static," Eva said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can you hear me? Are you still there?" The answer was the psychic echo, its voice mocking and triumphant. "Static is gone, Captain. He is now part of me, just as you soon will be." "Get out of the ship now," Eva ordered. "We can't risk you being caught by that thing." There was no response, save for the hiss of the airlock, a sound that, given the circumstances, was deeply ominous. "Too late," Eva said, turning to her remaining crew. "The airlock is opening. The echo is letting us inside." "What do we do?" Ozone asked, his voice filled with fear. "If it's in the ship, we're trapped. It has more power than ever." Eva ignored the tremor in Ozone's voice. She was done reacting with fear. She made a choice. She would use the only power she had to combat it, to try to stop the end of the world they were stumbling into. She turned to Glitch, her eyes conveying her resolve. "We have to trust each other. We have to trust me." "What are you going to do, Captain?" Hammer asked, his pulse rifle held at the ready. "We go into the Stardust," Eva said. "We face the echo head-on. We're not running anymore." Eva knew it was a suicidal move. They were walking into a trap, a situation where the psychic echo held all the cards. But they had no other option. They had to confront it, to try to break its hold on the ship, on Static, and on themselves. They entered the airlock. The door hissed shut behind them, sealing them inside the confines of the Stardust. The ship was eerily quiet. The lights flickered intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows across the corridors. The air was cold and stale, the atmosphere of the ship itself taking on the same chill as the station. "Static," Eva called out, her voice echoing through the ship. "Where are you?" A silence. Then a faint sound. a low, rhythmic thumping like a heartbeat. "It's coming from the bridge," Ozone said, his voice barely a whisper. They moved slowly through the corridors, their weapons at the ready. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound seemed to carry a threat. As they approached the bridge, the thumping grew louder, more insistent. The air became thick, heavy, almost suffocating. They reached the bridge and stopped. The scene that greeted them was one of pure nightmare. The bridge was in ruins. Consoles were smashed, wires were sparking, and the holographic display was flickering wildly. In the center of the bridge, strapped to the captain's chair, was Static. But it was static. The face was Static's, but their eyes, once filled with anxiety, were now empty, soulless black voids. Their body was rigid, their limbs twisted in unnatural positions. A web of black, viscous tendrils snaked around them, anchoring them to the chair. "Static," Eva whispered, her voice filled with grief. "What have they done to you?" The form in the chair didn't respond. Instead, the web of tendrils tightened, and a voice, a mixture of Static's familiar tone and the chilling whisper of the echo, filled the bridge. "They are mine now, Captain," the voice said, "just as you will be, and now I will show you the truth." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a series of images. Images of their fears, their regrets, their failures. Eva saw herself as a young cadet making mistakes, and she saw her crew dying in a fiery inferno of explosions. As the images played, the tendrils around Static tightened, squeezing their body, contorting their face. Static looked at Eva, a look of both terror and despair. "See," the voice said, "you are all failures, you will all die alone, you will all become part of me." The power surged through the room. The ship lurched violently, throwing them off balance. The holographic display showed the stardust hurtling towards a dying star. They were on a collision course, a preordained path to destruction. Eva knew that she had to act, and she had to act fast. She was now the empathy bomb, and she had to use its power to save herself and her crew. But how? She reached out with her mind, trying to connect with Static. She focused on their fear, their pain, their longing for escape. She poured all of her compassion, all of her love into them. The psychic echo recoiled, its voice filled with rage. "Stop it," it hissed. "You cannot do this." Eva ignored it. She kept pouring her empathy into Static, focusing on their fear, their pain, their longing. She wanted to show them that they weren't alone. She wanted to show them that there was still hope. As she channeled the power of the empathy bomb, the air in the bridge began to glow with a warm, radiant light. The tendrils around Static began to weaken, to dissolve. Static's eyes flickered, their face relaxed for a split second. "Help me, Captain," they breathed out, a hint of their own voice returning. Then the psychic echo roared, the tendrils tightened, and the ship's systems began to fail. Chapter 13: The Final Flight. Static's plea, a faint whisper amidst the psychic maelstrom, solidified Eva's resolve. The time for hesitation was over. This was the final stand. The psychic echo, cornered and desperate, was lashing out with all its remaining power, trying to drag them down into the abyss of fear and despair. Eva focused her energy. She visualized Static, not as a puppet of the echo, but as the brilliant, anxious, and fiercely loyal person she knew. She recalled Static's nervous jokes, their incredible technical skills, their unwavering dedication to the crew. She remembered their humanity, and she poured all of that into the psychic battle. "You're not going to win," Eva said, her voice resonating with newfound power. "You may be able to control their body, but you can't control their soul. Static is stronger than you think." As Eva channeled the empathy bomb's power, the tendrils surrounding Static began to glow brighter, flickering with an inner light. A wave of energy surged through the bridge, pushing back against the psychic echo's influence. The holographic display flickered, showing a brief glimpse of the Stardust's true trajectory, veering away from the dying star. The psychic echo screamed, its voice a cacophony of rage and despair. "No, this cannot be. I am the master of fear. I am the bringer of darkness." But Eva didn't waver. She held her focus, channeling all of her empathy, all of her love into Static. She wanted to show them that they weren't alone, that there was still hope, that they could break free from the psychic echo's control. Hammer and Ozone, seeing their chance, moved forward. They cautiously approached Static, their weapons trained on the tendrils, ready to sever them if necessary. "Static," Hammer said, his voice gentle but firm. "We're here for you. We're going to get you out of this." Glitch, despite their weakened state, stepped forward as well. They reached out and took Static's hand, their touch radiating a calming energy. "We believe in you, Static," Glitch said. "You can do this." The combined support of the crew, fueled by Eva's empathy, created a powerful wave of energy that washed over the bridge. The psychic echo recoiled, its influence weakening with each passing moment. The tendrils surrounding Static began to dissolve completely, their dark energy fading away. Static's body slumped forward, their head falling to their chest. Eva rushed to Static's side, gently lifting their head. "Static," she said, her voice filled with concern. "Can you hear me? Are you all right?" Static's eyes fluttered open, their gaze focusing on Eva. A faint smile appeared on their lips. "Captain," they whispered, their voice weak but clear. I think I'm back." Eva smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. They had done it. They had broken the psychic echo's hold on Static. They had won. But their victory was short-lived. As the psychic echo's influence faded, the ship began to shake violently. The emergency alarms blared and the lights flickered and died, plunging the bridge into darkness. "What's happening?" Ozone asked, his voice filled with alarm. "The ship is failing," Static said, their voice stronger now. "The psychic echo damaged the systems. We're losing power, life support is failing, and the engines are offline." "Can you fix it?" Eva asked, her voice filled with urgency. Static nodded. "I can try," they said, "but it's going to take time, and I don't know how much time we have." Static rushed to the control panel, their fingers flying across the damaged circuits. Hammer and Ozone stood guard, their weapons trained on the darkness. Eva looked at Glitch, their faces filled with worry. She knew that they were running out of time. They had to get off the Stardust before it was too late. "We need to get to the escape pods," Eva said. "Now." They turned and raced out of the bridge, heading towards the escape pod bay. As they ran, the ship continued to shake violently, and the lights flickered and died. They could hear the sounds of metal groaning and twisting as the stardust began to break apart. They reached the escape pod bay and found it in chaos. The pods were damaged, and the launch mechanisms were malfunctioning. "Can you fix this, Static?" Eva asked, her voice filled with desperation. Static shook their head. "I don't think so," they said. "It's too damaged. We're not going to be able to use the escape pods." Eva's heart sank. They were trapped. There was no way off the ship. Just as she was about to give up hope, she remembered something. The Psychopomp Station. The station was still there, drifting in the void of space. It was their only chance. "We're not going to use the escape pods," Eva said. "We're going back to the station." "What?" Hammer asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "You're crazy, Captain. That station is a death trap." "I know," Eva said, "but it's our only chance. We're going to use what's left of the Stardust thrusters to maneuver to the station." "What about the psychic echo?" Ozone asked, his voice trembling slightly. "It's still out there waiting for us." "I know," Eva said, "but we're not going to let it win. We're going to fight it all the way to the end." They turned and headed back towards the bridge, their faces set with determination. They were going to use the Stardust to fly back to the Psychopomp Station. Then they were going to leave, hopefully for good. As they made their way to the bridge, Eva felt the psychic echo stir within her. It was weak, but it was still there. It knew what she was planning, and it was trying to stop her. "You cannot do this," the psychic echo whispered, its voice a chilling presence in her mind. "You are mine. You will never escape." Eva ignored it. She focused on her goal, on her crew, on the need to survive. She would not let the psychic echo control her. She would fight it all the way to the end. They reached the bridge and found Static working furiously at the controls. The holographic display showed the Stardust slowly rotating towards the Psychopomp Station. "How much further?" Eva asked, her voice filled with urgency. "Almost there," Static said, their fingers flying across the damaged circuits. "Just need to adjust the trajectory." The Stardust shuddered violently, and the alarms blared even louder. The ship was falling apart, and they were running out of time. Just as they were about to reach the station, the psychic echo unleashed its final attack. A wave of energy surged through the ship, disabling the thrusters and plunging them into darkness. The Stardust was adrift, hurtling towards the void of space. "We're not going to make it," Ozone said, his voice filled with despair. "We're doomed." Eva looked at her crew, their faces etched with fear, their bodies weary from the ordeal. She knew that they were exhausted, that they had given everything they had. But she couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her empathy. She focused on the faces of her crew, on their hopes, their dreams, their fears. She poured all of her love, all of her compassion into them. Then she focused on the Psychopomp Station, on its history, its mysteries, its potential for both horror and salvation. She reached out with her mind, trying to connect with it, to understand it. And in that moment she felt something, a faint signal, a glimmer of hope. She opened her eyes, her gaze locking onto the station. She knew what she had to do. "I'm going to make a spacewalk," Eva said, her voice filled with determination. "What?" Hammer exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. "You're crazy, Captain. You'll never make it." "I have to try," Eva said. "It's our only chance." She turned to Static. "I'm going to use my abilities to send a signal, a request for help that only at the Psychopomp Station can hear. The power of the empathy bomb, it can do so much. It's time for us to leave." Static looked at her, their eyes filled with worry. "I'm coming with you," they said. "I'm not going to let you do this alone." Eva nodded. She knew that she couldn't do it without Static. Their technical expertise, their courage, their unwavering support were essential to her success. Eva and Static prepared for their spacewalk. They donned their pressure suits, checked their oxygen tanks, and secured their tethers. As they stood in the airlock, ready to open the door, Eva turned to her crew. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything. You're the best crew anyone could ask for." Hammer and Ozone looked at her, their eyes filled with tears. "Be careful, Captain," Hammer said, his voice trembling slightly. "We'll be waiting for you," Ozone said. Eva nodded, her heart filled with gratitude. She and Static stepped into the airlock and sealed the door behind them. As the airlock depressurized, they looked at each other, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. They opened the outer door and stepped out into the void of space. The Psychopomp Station loomed before them, a beacon of hope in the darkness. It was a long way off, but they were determined to reach it. Eva took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and focused her mind. She reached out with her empathy, sending a signal, a request for help that only the station could hear. A burst of energy surged through her body, and the station seemed to respond. A faint light flickered on, illuminating a section of the docking bay. The station had heard her plea. It was ready to help them. Eva and Static grabbed hold of their tethers and began to pull themselves towards the station. It was a long, slow, and arduous journey. The distance between them and the station was immense. They knew that they were running out of time. The stardust was falling apart, and the psychic echo was still out there, waiting to finish them off. But they refused to give up hope. They kept pulling, kept fighting, kept believing. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the station. They pulled themselves through the damaged airlock and into the docking bay. They were safe, at least for now. As they stepped out of their pressure suits, they looked at each other, their faces etched with exhaustion but also with triumph. They had survived. They had defeated the psychic echo. They had escaped from the stardust. They had made it through the patient zero glitch. They had survived. The end.